The summer of 1889 arrived with endless sunshine across the rolling plains of Red Creek. The largest ranch for hundreds of miles belonged to William Ashford, a wealthy cattle baron respected by every family in the territory. His beautiful daughter, Charlotte Ashford, had grown up surrounded by luxury, elegant horses, and grand celebrations, yet despite her privileged life, she often escaped the mansion to ride. Across the quiet fields where ordinary ranch workers lived, she believed kindness mattered more than wealth, though few people shared her view. Among those workers lived Ethan Miller, a young stable boy who had spent his entire life caring for the ranch horses. His parents had died when he was only a child, leaving him with nothing except determination, honesty, and a gentle heart. Every sunrise he cleaned the stables, repaired broken fences, and trained frightened horses that no one else could control. The workers admired his courage, but many reminded him that a poor stable boy should never dream beyond his place in life. Charlotte often watched Ethan from a distance. She noticed how even the wildest horses trusted him, and how he quietly helped struggling families without asking for praise. Although they rarely spoke, their eyes met many times across the ranch, creating silent moments neither could explain. One afternoon, a wealthy businessman named Victor Hawthorne arrived at the Ashford mansion. He brought news that shocked the entire household. William Ashford had lost nearly everything after trusting the wrong business partner. Massive debts now threatened the ranch, and creditors demanded payment within 30 days. Victor calmly offered a solution. Charlotte would marry his arrogant son, Edward Hawthorne, and every debt would disappear. William refused at first, but the future of hundreds of ranch workers depended upon his decision. That evening, Charlotte wandered alone toward the quiet stables, searching for peace. She found Ethan gently calming an injured white horse beneath the fading sunset. For the first time they spoke honestly, sharing hopes, fears, and dreams they had never revealed to anyone. Neither of them realized someone watched from the shadows. The stranger quietly smiled. Everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Morning arrived beneath clear blue skies, yet the Ashford mansion felt colder than the longest winter. Word of William Ashford's financial disaster spread quickly across Red Creek. Ranch workers whispered while merchants gathered outside the gates, hoping to learn whether the once powerful family would survive. Another meeting with Victor Hawthorne had been arranged before sunset, and everyone expected Charlotte to accept the marriage that would save the ranch. Charlotte spent the morning walking through the quiet gardens, unable to escape the weight pressing upon her heart. She loved her father deeply, yet she could not imagine spending her life beside Edward Hawthorne, whose pride and cruelty were known throughout the territory. Every path she followed seemed to lead toward the same impossible future. Meanwhile, Ethan continued working inside the stables, pretending nothing had changed. Although his hands remained busy, his thoughts never left Charlotte. He knew a man like him had no place beside the daughter of the richest ranch owner in the valley. Even dreaming about her felt like reaching for stars that could never be touched. That afternoon, William gathered every trusted ranch hand inside the old barn. His voice carried both sorrow and determination. He explained that unless a miracle happened, the ranch would belong to the Hawthorne family before the end of the month. Silence filled the room as loyal workers realized they might soon lose the only home they had ever known. Without warning, an elderly lawyer rode through the front gate carrying a sealed envelope marked with the Ashford family crest. He claimed the letter had remained hidden for 25 years and could only be delivered if William Ashford ever faced complete ruin. William carefully opened the envelope. His face changed as he read every line. Charlotte stepped closer. "Father, what is it?" William slowly lowered the letter. "Your late mother made one final request before she died. If this family ever stood on the edge of losing everything, you must marry the man whose name is written inside this letter." The room became completely silent. William unfolded the final page. His trembling voice spoke only 2 words. Ethan Miller. Silence filled the old barn after William Ashford spoke the name. Ethan Miller. Every ranch worker looked toward the young stable boy standing near the open doorway. Ethan believed he had misunderstood what he had heard. A man who owned nothing could never become the husband of Charlotte, Ashford, yet every face around him showed the same disbelief. William slowly handed the letter to Charlotte. She carefully read the faded words written in her mother's graceful handwriting. Tears gathered in her eyes. The letter explained that many years earlier, her mother had made a promise to a dying woman. During a terrible winter, that woman had saved her life after a wagon accident. Deep with gratitude, she promised that if fate ever placed both families in desperate need, they would become one family through marriage. Charlotte looked toward Ethan. "Your mother saved mine?" Ethan remained speechless. He had no memory of his parents, beyond a few old stories told by neighbors. No one had ever mentioned such a promise. Victor Hawthorne stepped forward with anger burning across his face. "This is nothing more than an old letter. It has no value." William calmly folded the paper. "This letter carries my late wife's final wish. I will honor it." Edward Hawthorne shouted that the marriage would ruin Charlotte's future, but she quietly raised her hand, stopping every argument. "If my mother trusted this promise, then I will trust it too." The room fell silent once again. Ethan slowly walked toward William. "Sir, I cannot accept charity." William placed a firm hand upon his shoulder. "This is not charity. It is honor." That evening, the entire town learned that the millionaire's daughter would marry the poor stable boy. Within 7 days, people laughed across every street, believing the marriage would become the greatest failure Red Creek had ever seen. Late that night, Ethan returned to the empty stable, searching for peace. Inside an old wooden trunk that had belonged to his father, he discovered a small iron key wrapped inside a faded cloth. Alongside it rested another unopened letter carrying only one sentence. "When the time is right, this key will unlock the truth about your real family." Ethan stared at the mysterious message, knowing his life had changed forever. The morning sun rose over Red Creek, bringing bright golden light across the endless fields, yet the peaceful beauty could not calm the excitement spreading through every street. Every shopkeeper, traveler, and ranch worker spoke about only one thing. The daughter of the richest ranch owner would marry a poor stable boy before the week ended. Some laughed, while others believed the Ashford family had finally lost its pride. Charlotte spent the morning helping the women prepare the old family chapel. She wore no expensive jewelry and asked for no grand decorations. She wanted the ceremony to honor her mother's final wish, rather than display wealth. Her quiet strength surprised everyone who expected tears or regret. Instead, they found calm determination shining in her eyes. Ethan remained inside the stables, caring for the horses, as he always had. Every familiar task helped quiet the storm inside his heart. He still struggled to believe that fate had chosen him for a life he had never imagined. The mysterious iron key remained hidden inside his pocket, reminding him that another secret still waited to be uncovered. William Ashford gathered his most trusted workers before noon. He thanked every family that had stood beside the ranch during difficult times. Then he made a promise that no matter what happened after the wedding, every worker would always have a home on Ashford land. The crowd answered with grateful applause, while many quietly wiped away tears. Far across the valley, Victor Hawthorne watched the celebration through a brass telescope. His face darkened with anger. He had already spent years planning to take control of the Ashford ranch, and he refused to lose everything because of one forgotten promise. Edward stepped beside his father, asking what they would do next. Victor smiled coldly. "A marriage can happen, but it does not have to last." As evening approached, Charlotte walked alone toward the old willow tree beside the river. Ethan soon joined her. Neither spoke for several moments as the setting sun painted the sky with warm colors. Finally, Charlotte smiled gently. "No matter what tomorrow brings, we will face it together." Hidden among the trees, an unknown rider quietly folded a map marked with the location of an abandoned mansion. The iron key in Ethan's pocket belonged to that forgotten place. Wedding day arrived beneath a clear summer sky. The little white chapel stood on a gentle hill, surrounded by wildflowers and tall oak trees. Families traveled from every corner of Red Creek to witness the marriage that everyone believed would never last. Some came out of curiosity, while others hoped to see the Ashford family humiliated, yet William Ashford welcomed every guest with quiet dignity, refusing to let gossip steal the meaning of the day. Charlotte walked toward the chapel wearing a simple ivory frontier dress that had once belonged to her late mother fresh. White flowers rested in her hair, and her calm smile reflected both courage and kindness. She carried no expensive jewels because she believed love could never be measured by wealth. Ethan waited beside the altar wearing his finest Western suit. Although it was modest compared with the clothing of wealthy ranch owners, he stood proudly with honesty shining through his eyes. The mysterious iron key remained safely hidden inside, his jacket pocket reminding him that unanswered questions still surrounded his family. As Charlotte reached the altar, every whisper inside the chapel disappeared. The minister smiled warmly and began the ceremony. William watched with tears of pride, knowing his wife would have been happy to see her final promise fulfilled. Just as Ethan and Charlotte prepared to exchange their vows, the chapel doors suddenly burst open. Victor Hawthorne entered, followed by Edward and several armed men. Their arrival filled the room with fear. Victor held a folded document high above his head. "This marriage cannot continue." Everyone turned toward him in shocked silence. Victor claimed he possessed legal papers proving that William Ashford had signed away the ranch months earlier. If the document was genuine, then neither the ranch nor the wedding belonged to the Ashford family anymore. William carefully examined the paper. His face became pale. Charlotte looked toward her father with growing fear. Ethan stepped forward, refusing to leave her side. Before anyone could speak, another voice echoed from the back of the chapel. "That document is a forgery." An elderly stranger walked slowly down the aisle, carrying an old leather briefcase. He looked directly at Ethan, then smiled. "I have been searching for you for 25 years. The chapel remained silent as the elderly stranger slowly walked toward the altar carrying his worn leather briefcase. Every guest watched with confusion while Victor Hawthorne stared at the newcomer with visible anger. The old man stopped beside Ethan and studied his face with gentle eyes that seemed to recognize someone he had not seen for many years. "My name is Benjamin Harper," he said softly. "I was the lawyer and closest friend of your parents." Ethan felt his heart race. "You knew my family." Benjamin nodded. "Better than anyone." He carefully placed the leather briefcase upon the altar and removed several old documents, wrapped inside a faded blue cloth. Every paper carried official government seals that had remained untouched for decades. Victor stepped forward. "Those papers mean nothing." Benjamin calmly smiled. "They mean everything." He handed the first document to William Ashford. William slowly read each page before looking at Ethan with complete disbelief. "This changes everything." Charlotte moved closer. "Father, what does it say?" William answered with a trembling voice. Ethan Miller was never poor. His parents secretly owned thousands of acres of land beyond Silver Valley, along with one of the largest horse breeding ranches in the territory. Benjamin opened another document. When Ethan's parents died, their property was placed into a protected family trust. Until Ethan reached the proper age, no one could claim it. Victor suddenly became nervous. "That land disappeared years ago." Benjamin looked directly into his eyes. "No, someone forged documents and stole it." The investigation names only one suspect, Victor Hawthorne. The chapel filled with shocked whispers. Edward stared at his father, unable to believe what he was hearing. Benjamin reached inside the briefcase one final time and removed an old brass lockbox. He placed it before Ethan. "The iron key your father left behind opens this box." With shaking hands, Ethan unlocked it. Inside rested a beautiful gold pocket. Watched several family photographs and one final letter. Across the front were words written by his mother. "My beloved son, the greatest treasure we leave you is not our land. It is the truth about who you are." The chapel remained completely silent as Ethan carefully unfolded the final letter. His hands trembled while every guest waited to hear the words written by a woman who had died many years before. Charlotte quietly stood beside him, offering silent support while William, Benjamin, and even Edward watched with growing curiosity. Ethan slowly began reading. "My beloved son, if these words have reached your hands, then I am no longer beside you. Never allow wealth to decide your worth. Your father and I worked hard to build an honest life, but kindness will always be more valuable than land, gold, or power. If anyone ever steals what belongs to you, do not answer hatred with hatred. Fight only for truth, because truth lasts longer than revenge. Tears filled Ethan's eyes as he continued. There is one final secret I could never tell you. The ranch everyone believes was abandoned still hides something far greater than money. Beneath the old red barn your father buried proof that can expose every person responsible for destroying our family. Trust the iron key, trust Benjamin Harper, and above all, trust your heart. The chapel remained silent for several moments. Benjamin gently closed the letter. Your parents knew danger was coming. They spent years protecting that evidence until the day they disappeared. Victor Hawthorne suddenly stepped backward toward the chapel door. His calm expression had completely vanished. Benjamin pointed toward him. You are afraid because you know exactly what lies beneath that barn? William looked directly at Victor. Did you destroy Ethan's family? Victor answered with cold anger. Business is never personal. Sometimes people simply disappear. Before anyone could react, Victor pulled a revolver from beneath his coat. Smoke exploded through the chapel as the gun fired. Benjamin stumbled backward, holding his shoulder, while frightened guests rushed for safety. Charlotte screamed, and Ethan caught the old lawyer before he fell. Victor escaped through the chapel doors, with Edward following behind. Outside, dozens of horses thundered across the valley. Benjamin struggled to speak. Do not chase him yet. Go to the old ranch first. Everything your parents died protecting is still buried beneath the red barn. Morning sunlight spread across Red Creek as Ethan, Charlotte, William, Benjamin, and a small group of trusted ranch hands rode toward the abandoned Miller Ranch. The old property had remained empty for more than 25 years. Tall grass covered the forgotten trails while broken fences leaned beneath the weight of time. Every building carried the silence of memories that had never been allowed to rest. When Ethan stepped through the rusted front gate, a strange feeling filled his heart. Although he had no memory of living there, everything seemed familiar. The wind carried the scent of old cedarwood and wildflowers. Just as his mother's letter had described, the large red barn still stood in the middle of the property. Weathered by countless storms, yet refusing to fall, Benjamin pointed toward the center of the wooden floor. Your father built this barn with his own hands. The truth waits beneath it. Ethan removed the iron key from his pocket. While the ranch hands lifted heavy wooden planks, he searched the floor until he discovered a small iron lock hidden beneath years of dust. The key fit perfectly. A loud click echoed through the silent barn. Slowly, a hidden trapdoor opened, revealing a narrow staircase leading deep underground. Cold air drifted upward, carrying the smell of old timber and damp earth. Charlotte lit a lantern and followed. Ethan into the darkness, William, Benjamin, and the others came behind them. At the bottom, they entered a secret room untouched for decades. Wooden shelves held journals, maps, legal records, and sealed envelopes. Every document had been carefully protected from time. Benjamin smiled through tears. Your father knew someone would one day return. Ethan opened the nearest journal. Inside were detailed records proving that Victor Hawthorne had forged land deeds, stolen ranches, and bribed powerful officials across the territory. Then Charlotte noticed a beautiful silver locket resting alone upon a wooden table. She carefully opened it. Inside were two tiny portraits. One showed Ethan as a baby. The other showed Charlotte as a little girl. Beneath the portraits were words that left everyone speechless. One promise. Two families. One destiny. The discovery beneath the red barn changed everything. Ethan carefully packed every journal, map, and legal record into wooden crates, knowing they would one day expose the crimes that had ruined countless innocent families. Benjamin insisted that they leave before sunset because Victor Hawthorne would soon realize the hidden chamber had been found. The group followed an old trail leading toward Silver Hill, where Ethan's parents had once lived before moving to the Miller Ranch. Thick oak trees lined the narrow road while abandoned. Stone fences disappeared beneath climbing vines. Every mile brought Ethan closer to a childhood he could barely remember. As they reached the top of the hill, an enormous stone mansion appeared beyond the trees. Although time had weathered its walls, the building still carried quiet beauty. Tall windows reflected the evening light, while ivy climbed across the front entrance. Like the barn, the mansion had been abandoned for many years. Benjamin looked toward Ethan. "This was your first home. Your parents left after discovering someone planned to steal everything they owned." Charlotte gently held Ethan's hand. Together they stepped through the large wooden doors. Dust covered every room, yet expensive. Furniture, elegant paintings, and crystal chandeliers remained untouched, as though the family had simply walked away one afternoon. While exploring the library, Ethan noticed a strange carving shaped like an eagle on the fireplace. He remembered seeing the same symbol engraved upon the iron key. He pressed the carving. A hidden panel slowly opened, revealing another secret room. Inside stood an old wooden desk covered with maps, letters, and several locked boxes. Hanging above the desk was a large portrait of Ethan's parents smiling proudly beside a young William Ashford. Charlotte stared at the painting. "Our families were closer than anyone ever knew." Benjamin quietly opened the desk drawer. Inside rested one final document signed by both families. It revealed that William Ashford and Ethan's father had secretly built a partnership to protect their land from corrupt businessmen. Before anyone could continue, a loud crash echoed through the mansion. One of the front windows shattered. A burning torch landed upon the wooden floor. Outside, Victor Hawthorne and dozens of armed riders surrounded Silver Hill. The mansion had become their next battlefield. Flames quickly spread across the wooden floors as smoke filled the grand entrance. Of the Silver Hill mansion, Ethan rushed forward and kicked the burning torch through a broken window before the fire could consume the room. Outside, Victor Hawthorne and his armed riders slowly surrounded the estate, believing no one inside would escape alive. William Ashford ordered every ranch hand to secure the doors, while Benjamin gathered the precious journals, maps, and legal records into heavy leather bags. Charlotte helped carry the documents, knowing they represented the only proof capable of exposing every crime committed during the past 25 years. Victor stepped from his horse and looked toward the mansion with complete confidence. "You still have one chance. Bring me every document and I will spare your lives." Ethan answered from the front balcony. "The truth is no longer yours to bury." Victor smiled coldly. "Then the mansion burns with all of you inside." At his command, dozens of riders launched flaming arrows toward the roof dry. Wooden beams caught fire almost immediately. Thick black smoke climbed into the evening sky, while frightened horses neighed across the courtyard. Benjamin hurried toward the hidden study. "There is another way out. Your father prepared it long before any of this happened." He pushed aside a tall bookshelf, revealing a narrow stone passage hidden inside the wall. Cold air drifted through the tunnel, proving it led outside. Everyone began carrying the evidence into the secret passage, but Ethan suddenly stopped near the old family portrait hanging behind the frame. He noticed another sealed envelope addressed only to him. He carefully removed it and slipped it inside his coat. Moments later, the group escaped through the underground tunnel just as the roof of the mansion collapsed behind them. From the safety of a nearby hillside, they watched Silver Hill disappear beneath towering flames. Charlotte quietly held Ethan's hand. "We saved the truth." Ethan nodded, but his eyes remained fixed upon the sealed envelope. As he slowly opened it, one sentence changed everything. "Your real enemy was never Victor Hawthorne. He has always been working for someone far more powerful." Morning arrived beneath a sky covered with grey clouds as Ethan unfolded the letter he had rescued from the burning mansion. Charlotte, William, Benjamin, and the others gathered around, while the cold wind carried smoke from the ruins across the quiet hills. The words had been written in his father's careful handwriting only days before his mysterious disappearance. "My beloved son, if you are reading this, then Silver Hill has already fallen. Never waste your strength believing Victor Hawthorne created this tragedy. He is only a servant following orders. The true enemy hides behind respect, wealth, and power. Few people know his face, but many obey his commands." Ethan continued reading while everyone listened in complete silence. "His name is Jonathan Blackwood. The richest railroad owner in the Western Territories, he wanted every piece of land stretching from Red Creek to Silver Valley because he planned to build the largest railway ever seen. Anyone refusing to sell became his enemy. Families disappeared, ranches burned. Honest judges accepted bribes and newspapers printed only the lies he approved. William looked toward Benjamin with disbelief. "Blackwood has been welcomed into my home many times." Benjamin slowly nodded. That is exactly how he survived for so long. The letter continued. Inside the old railway station at Iron Pass, there is a hidden office containing every contract, every payment and every secret agreement proving Blackwood controlled Victor Hawthorne from the beginning. Find those records and every stolen ranch can be returned to its rightful family. Charlotte gently folded the letter. Then our next journey is clear. Benjamin looked toward the distant mountains. Iron Pass is 3 days away, but Blackwood will already know we escaped the fire. Before anyone could speak, the sound of a train whistle echoed across the valley. Everyone turned toward the tracks. A long black locomotive slowly appeared, pulling several polished passenger cars. Standing on the rear platform was a tall man wearing an elegant black coat and carrying a silver cane. Benjamin quietly whispered, "Jonathan Blackwood. He has finally come for the documents himself." The long black locomotive rolled slowly into the station as steam covered the quiet valley. Jonathan Blackwood stood upon the rear platform dressed in an elegant black coat holding a polished silver cane. His calm smile revealed the confidence of a man who believed the entire frontier already belonged to him. Armed guards stepped from every passenger car, forming a wall around their powerful employer. Ethan quietly folded his father's letter and placed it inside his jacket. Benjamin looked toward the approaching train with deep concern. He never travels without a reason. William studied the guards. This is no business visit. He came to finish what Victor could not. Charlotte stood beside Ethan, refusing to show fear. "Then we cannot let him reach Iron Pass before us." Blackwood slowly removed his gloves and spoke with a calm voice that carried across the silent station. "Good morning, William Ashford. I regret the unfortunate fire at Silver Hill." William answered coldly. "You caused it." Blackwood smiled politely. "History remembers only successful men, not honest ones." Benjamin stepped forward, holding one of the leather bags containing the hidden records. "These documents will prove every crime you committed." Blackwood looked at the bag without changing his expression. "Then I suppose those papers must disappear." At his signal, the guards raised their rifles. Before anyone fired, a loud whistle echoed from another track. An old freight train emerged from behind the hills, moving directly toward the station. Lucas leaned closer to Ethan. "This is our chance." As every guard turned toward the unexpected train, Ethan, Charlotte, William, Benjamin, and the others ran across the platform, climbing aboard the moving freight cars just before they gathered speed. Blackwood shouted furious orders while his men rushed after them, but the train had already entered the mountain pass. Inside the empty freight carriage, Ethan opened one of the old maps recovered from Silver Hill. A small red mark appeared beside the railway station at Iron Pass. Hidden beneath it were words written by his father. Only the station master knows the final truth. Then the train disappeared into a dark mountain tunnel while another locomotive entered from the opposite side, racing straight toward them. The roaring sound of steel echoed through the mountain. As the freight train raced deeper into Black Ridge Tunnel, Ethan looked through the narrow window and saw another locomotive, charging directly toward them from the opposite direction. Sparks flew beneath the wheels. While both engines rushed closer every second, Charlotte gripped his arm. "We are going to crash." Benjamin quickly studied the railway map spread across the wooden floor. "There is an emergency switching station inside this tunnel. If we reach it before the other train, someone can change the tracks." William pointed toward the front carriage. "Then we have no time to lose." Ethan, Lucas, and Benjamin climbed across the moving freight cars while the train shook violently beneath them. Cold wind rushed through the tunnel carrying smoke and burning coal dust. Every step became more dangerous as the distance between the two locomotives disappeared. Finally, they reached the engine. The frightened engineer shouted above the noise, "The control lever is gone. Someone removed it before we left Red Creek." Benjamin immediately understood. Blackwood planned this from the beginning. He wanted everyone aboard this train to die. Lucas searched the engine room until he discovered a heavy iron wrench. Ethan forced open the maintenance hatch beside the controls. Behind the metal panel, an old emergency lever remained hidden beneath years of dust. With all his strength, Ethan pulled it downward. Far ahead, massive railway tracks slowly shifted. The oncoming locomotive thundered onto the second line, missing them by only a few feet. The explosion of steam and flying sparks filled the tunnel as both trains passed each other at terrifying speed. Everyone inside the freight train breathed with relief. But the danger was not over. As daylight appeared beyond the tunnel, Ethan noticed several armed riders waiting beside the tracks. Jonathan Blackwood had predicted they would survive. The freight train suddenly slowed as damaged rails forced the engineer to stop. The riders surrounded the train before anyone could escape. Blackwood himself stepped forward, smiling calmly. "Welcome to Iron Pass. Now give me the documents, or no one leaves these mountains alive." The mountain air felt cold as Ethan, Charlotte, William, Benjamin, and Lucas slowly stepped down from the stopped freight train. Armed riders surrounded them from every direction, holding loaded rifles. Jonathan Blackwood stood calmly at the center of the tracks, his polished silver cane resting against his shoulder. His confident smile revealed that he believed victory was finally within reach. Blackwood looked directly at Ethan. "You have caused enough trouble. Hand over the documents and this ends today." Ethan tightened his grip on the leather satchel. "These papers belong to every family you destroyed." Blackwood laughed quietly. "History belongs to the powerful, not to the honest." Before anyone could answer, an elderly man wearing a faded railway uniform walked out of the nearby station carrying an old lantern. Despite the danger, his face showed no fear. Benjamin smiled with surprise. "Station Master Thomas, I thought you were dead." Thomas nodded slowly. That is exactly what Blackwood wanted everyone to believe. He walked toward Ethan and carefully examined the iron key hanging around his neck. "Your father trusted you with this. Then the time has finally come." Thomas led the group inside the abandoned station, where dust covered every wall and broken clocks had stopped many years earlier. Behind the ticket counter he pushed aside a heavy wooden cabinet revealing a hidden steel door. The iron key unlocked it perfectly. Inside waited a secret office untouched for decades. Shelves overflowed with ledgers, land contracts, bank records, and signed agreements, every page carried Jonathan Blackwood's signature, proving he had secretly controlled corrupt judges, sheriffs, bankers, and businessmen across the Western Territories. Charlotte looked through the files in disbelief. "This is enough to expose everyone." Thomas quietly opened one final drawer. Inside rested a small leather notebook. "Your father asked me to protect this until you arrived." Ethan opened the notebook. The first page contained a list of every family Blackwood had ruined. The final page contained only one shocking sentence. "There is another heir. She has lived beside you since childhood." Everyone turned toward Charlotte. Then Thomas slowly shook his head. Not Charlotte. Someone else had been hiding their true identity all along. Silence filled the hidden office as everyone stared at Thomas, the E. Old station master carefully closed the leather notebook before, looking toward the small group gathered around the wooden table. Ethan struggled to understand the final sentence written by his father. If Charlotte was not the hidden heir, then who had lived beside them, carrying another identity all these years? Thomas slowly turned toward Benjamin. "Tell them the truth." Benjamin lowered his head with regret. "There is only one person left." Lucas looked confused. "Who?" Benjamin pointed toward a quiet young woman who had traveled with them since leaving Red Creek. She had always introduced herself as Anna, a simple schoolteacher who helped William Ashford care for orphaned children after the ranch fell into debt. Anna stepped forward with tears in her eyes. "My real name is Isabella Blackwood. Jonathan Blackwood is my father." The room fell completely silent. Charlotte stared at her closest childhood friend, unable to believe what she had heard. "You worked beside me for years." Anna nodded sadly. "I never wanted his wealth. I never wanted his name. When I learned what he had done to innocent families, I left his mansion and changed my identity, hoping no one would ever find me. Thomas opened another locked drawer and removed a small velvet box. Inside rested an official birth certificate and the original inheritance papers. Benjamin carefully examined them. These documents prove Isabella owns half of the Blackwood fortune. Jonathan kept them hidden because he feared she would expose him. Ethan looked toward Isabella. "Then you can stop him." She slowly shook her head. "Only if we reach the courthouse before he destroys every record." At that moment, the sound of exploding glass echoed through the station. Blackwood men had found the secret office. Bullets shattered the windows. While frightened passengers ran across the platform outside, Thomas quickly opened a hidden tunnel beneath the wooden floor. "Go now!" The courthouse is only 1 day away. If Blackwood reaches it first, every piece of evidence will disappear forever. Ethan grabbed the documents Charlotte took, Isabella's hand, and together they disappeared into the darkness beneath. "Iron Pass, while Jonathan..." Blackwood smiled outside, knowing the final battle had only just begun. The hidden tunnel beneath Iron Pass stretched for miles beneath the mountains. Ethan led the group forward, carrying the leather satchel filled with every document that could destroy. Jonathan Blackwood forever. Charlotte walked beside Isabella, while William, Benjamin, Lucas, and Thomas followed close behind. Every distant sound echoed through the narrow passage, reminding them that Blackwood men were searching every exit. After several hours, the tunnel opened into Dead Man's Forest. Tall pine trees blocked the sunlight, creating long shadows across the silent ground. The old forest had earned its name because travelers who entered alone were rarely seen again. Thomas pointed toward the eastern hills. "Beyond those trees stands the county courthouse. If we reach it before sunset, Blackwood will lose everything." The group hurried forward, but suddenly Lucas raised his hand.
"Horse tracks."
"Fresh ones?" Benjamin knelt beside the trail. "At least 20 riders. They are only minutes ahead of us." Without warning, the sound of hunting horns echoed through the forest. Birds burst into the sky as armed riders surrounded the trees. Jonathan Blackwood had already discovered the tunnel exit. Blackwood slowly rode into the clearing, wearing his elegant black coat. His expression remained calm as always. "You have made this journey far more difficult than necessary. Give me the documents." Ethan stepped in front of Charlotte and Isabella. "These papers belong to the people." "Not to you." Blackwood smiled. "Very well. Capture them." The forest exploded into chaos. Horses charged between the trees, while bullets struck branches above their heads. Ethan grabbed Charlotte's hand and ran deeper into the woods. Isabella stayed beside, William protecting the leather satchel, while Lucas and Benjamin led the riders away in another direction. During the desperate escape, Charlotte stumbled near a steep cliff. Ethan caught her before she fell, but the satchel slipped from Isabella's, hand sliding toward the edge. Everyone watched in horror. The priceless evidence balanced on a single rock above the deep canyon. Then a mysterious masked rider appeared from nowhere, leaping from his horse and catching the satchel only moments before it disappeared into the abyss. The stranger removed his hat. Ethan froze. The man looked exactly like his late father. Silence spread across Dead Man's Forest as the mysterious rider slowly lowered the leather satchel back into Ethan's hands. His face looked almost identical to the portrait Ethan had carried since childhood. The same strong jaw, the same deep blue eyes, and the same calm expression stared back at him. Ethan stepped forward, unable to believe what he was seeing.
"Father."
The stranger gently shook his head. "No, but I was your father's twin brother. My name is Daniel Miller." Everyone stood frozen. Benjamin stared at the man with tears in his eyes. "We searched for you for 25 years. Daniel smiled sadly. "Jonathan Blackwood wanted everyone to believe both Miller brothers were dead. Your father sacrificed himself so I could escape with part of the evidence. I spent years hiding across the Northern Territories waiting for the right moment to return." Charlotte looked at Daniel with disbelief. "Then you knew the truth all along?" Daniel nodded. "Every day, I watched from the shadows, protecting Ethan whenever I could. Without your father's sacrifice, none of us would still be alive." Suddenly, the sound of galloping horses echoed through the forest. Blackwood riders had found them again. Daniel quickly looked toward Ethan. "There is no more time. The courthouse lies beyond Eagle Bridge. Take the evidence there." I will hold them back. Ethan immediately refused. I will not lose another member of my family. Daniel placed both hands on Ethan's shoulders. Your father gave his life so you could finish this fight. Do not waste his sacrifice. Lucas pointed toward the eastern trail. More riders are coming. Charlotte took Ethan's hand. We have to move now. With heavy hearts, the group raced toward Eagle Bridge while Daniel remained behind. Moments later, gunfire echoed through the forest as Daniel faced dozens of Blackwood riders alone, buying precious time for his family. As Ethan reached the far side of the bridge, he turned back one final time. The wooden bridge suddenly exploded into flames, collapsing into the rushing river below. Daniel Miller disappeared inside the fire. No one knew whether he had survived. But Jonathan Blackwood smiled from the opposite side of the river because he believed the final obstacle between himself and victory had finally been destroyed. Smoke still rose above the river as Ethan forced himself to keep riding. Every heartbeat echoed with the image of Daniel Miller disappearing inside the burning bridge. Charlotte remained beside him, while Isabella, William, Benjamin, Lucas and Thomas followed across the winding mountain trail. No one spoke because every moment lost brought Jonathan Blackwood closer to destroying the final evidence. As the sun slowly dropped toward the western hills, the tall stone courthouse finally appeared above the town of Ash Creek. Crowds filled the streets, unaware that the future of countless families depended upon what would happen before sunset. Thomas pointed toward the courthouse tower. Once the evening bell rings, the court closes. Until tomorrow, every record inside will be sealed. Benjamin looked behind them. Blackwood will never allow us to reach those doors. Before anyone could answer, dozens of black carriages entered the town from the opposite road. Jonathan Blackwood stepped onto the street surrounded by armed guards and corrupt deputies waiting for his orders. The frightened townspeople quickly moved aside. Blackwood smiled calmly. You have traveled very far, Ethan. Now your journey ends. Ethan climbed from his horse holding the leather satchel tightly. The truth ends today. Not our journey. Charlotte, Isabella, William, Lucas, and Benjamin stood beside him, refusing to step back. The courthouse doors remained only a short distance away. Suddenly church bells echoed across Ash Creek, announcing the final hour before sunset. Blackwood raised his silver cane. Arrest them all! Corrupt deputies rushed forward, but before they reached, Ethan and another group rode into the town square. Dozens of honest sheriffs, judges, ranchers, and settlers surrounded the courthouse, carrying copies of the stolen land records that Benjamin had secretly delivered days earlier. The entire town watched in astonishment. Judge Eleanor Whitmore stepped onto the courthouse stairs, holding an official arrest warrant. Jonathan Blackwood. You are charged with fraud, murder, conspiracy, bribery, and the theft of hundreds of family properties. For the first time, Blackwood lost his calm expression. He slowly reached inside his coat and pulled out a hidden revolver. He aimed directly at Ethan. Then a single gunshot echoed across the square before anyone else could move. The gunshot echoed across the crowded town square, and silence followed for one terrifying moment. Ethan remained standing untouched while Jonathan Blackwood slowly looked down at his own hand. The revolver had been blasted from his grip before he could fire. Everyone turned toward the courthouse roof. A lone rifleman lowered his weapon and removed his wide hat. Daniel Miller was alive. Cheers spread through the crowd as Ethan smiled with relief. The burning bridge had not claimed his uncle's life. Instead, Daniel had crossed the river through an old stone passage known only to local hunters, arriving just in time to stop Blackwood. Jonathan quickly turned and tried to escape through the narrow streets, but honest sheriffs closed every exit. Armed deputies who had secretly served Blackwood threw down their badges as townspeople watched their empire collapse. Judge Eleanor Whitmore ordered the guards forward. Jonathan Blackwood, you are under arrest. Blackwood laughed bitterly. You may arrest me, but you will never prove anything. Ethan calmly stepped onto the courthouse stairs carrying the leather satchel. Then he opened it. Benjamin, Thomas, and Isabella carefully placed every journal, contract, map bank, record, land deed, and signed confession upon the judge's table. Each document revealed another crime, every forged signature, every stolen ranch, every family forced from their home, every payment made to corrupt officials. The courtroom remained silent as the evidence continued to grow. Judge Whitmore slowly closed the final ledger. There is more than enough proof. Jonathan Blackwood is guilty on every charge. Blackwood looked toward Isabella. You betrayed your own father. She answered with quiet strength. No, I chose justice over fear. Outside the courthouse, hundreds of families gathered together. Many recognized their own names inside the recovered records. Tears filled their eyes as they realized their homes and land would finally be returned. As the guards placed iron handcuffs around Jonathan Blackwood's wrists, he smiled one final time. This is not over. There is still one secret none of you have discovered. Ethan looked directly into his eyes. What secret? Blackwood answered calmly. The person who ordered me to destroy your family was never me. It was someone you have trusted since the very beginning. Silence settled over the courthouse after Jonathan Blackwood spoke his final words. Every person inside the courtroom looked at one another, searching for the face of the hidden traitor. Ethan refused to believe that someone close to him could have helped destroy his family. Yet Blackwood smiled with complete confidence, as though he had already won. Judge Eleanor. Whitmore ordered the guards to take Blackwood away, but before they reached the prison wagon, he spoke once more. As Benjamin Harper, where he disappeared for 3 years after your parents vanished. Every eye turned toward Benjamin. The elderly lawyer lowered his head without speaking. Ethan stepped closer. Tell me he's lying. Benjamin slowly removed his glasses. I wish I could. 25 years earlier, after your parents disappeared, I was captured by Blackwood men. They gave me only 2 choices. Help them find the remaining family records or watch innocent children die. Charlotte looked at him with disbelief. You helped them? Benjamin nodded with tears in his eyes. For a short time, yes. I revealed several hiding places, believing I could secretly protect the rest. But Blackwood betrayed his promise anyway. From that day forward, I spent every year trying to repair the damage I had caused. Thomas quietly placed a hand on Benjamin's shoulder. Without him, none of the evidence would have survived. He risked his life many times to steal documents back from Blackwood. Ethan remained silent. The pain of betrayal filled his heart, yet he also saw the regret in the old lawyer's eyes. Finally, Ethan spoke. You made a terrible mistake, but you spent 25 years trying to make it right. My father believed people deserved a second chance. So will I. Benjamin broke into tears. Thank you. Before anyone could speak, another deputy rushed into the courthouse carrying urgent news. Sir, Jonathan Blackwood has escaped. Everyone turned toward the open window. The prison wagon stood outside. Its guards lay unconscious on the ground. Blackwood had disappeared. On the wooden seat of the empty wagon lay a folded note addressed to Ethan. He slowly opened it. Only one sentence was written inside. Meet me at Eagle Peak if you ever want to know how your parents really died. Before sunrise, Ethan, Charlotte, Isabella, William, Benjamin, Thomas, Lucas, and Judge Eleanor rode toward Eagle Peak. The cold mountain wind carried thick mist across the narrow trails, making every turn feel uncertain. Jonathan Blackwood had escaped only hours earlier, yet instead of fleeing the territory, he had invited Ethan to the highest mountain. In the region, everyone believed it was a trap, but Ethan knew he could never ignore the chance to learn the truth about his parents. After several hours, they reached the rocky summit. A lonely stone cabin stood near the edge of the cliff, surrounded by ancient pine trees. Blackwood waited outside without guards or weapons. His calm expression surprised everyone. Ethan stepped forward. You wanted me here. Tell me the truth. Blackwood slowly nodded. Your parents were never supposed to die. They agreed to sell part of their land after. I promised to protect every family living there. Then someone far more dangerous entered the plan. Charlotte looked at him with disbelief. Who? Blackwood pointed toward the old cabin. Everything you need is inside. Ethan carefully opened the wooden door. Dust covered the floor, but a small table stood untouched. In the center rested an old diary beside a faded photograph. The picture showed Ethan's parents, William Ashford, Benjamin Harper, and another man smiling together many years earlier. Ethan picked up the diary. The first page carried the name Governor Richard Caldwell. Benjamin suddenly became pale. "No, it cannot be." Blackwood looked directly at everyone. Caldwell secretly financed the railway project. He ordered every murder, every forged document, and every stolen ranch. I only followed his commands because he controlled every court, every sheriff, and every bank across the territory. Thomas slowly opened the diary. Every payment, every order, and every signature had been recorded inside. Judge Eleanor Whitmore looked at the evidence in disbelief. This is enough to bring down the most powerful man in the territory. Just then, the sound of horses echoed across the mountain. Hundreds of armed state soldiers surrounded Eagle Peak. At their front rode Governor Richard Caldwell himself. He smiled coldly before giving a single order: "Leave no witnesses alive." The mountain echoed with the sound of marching boots as hundreds of state soldiers surrounded Eagle Peak. Their rifles pointed toward Ethan, Charlotte, Isabella, William, Benjamin, Thomas, Lucas, Judge Eleanor, and Jonathan Blackwood. Escape seemed impossible. Governor Richard Caldwell slowly rode forward, wearing an elegant military coat. Decorated with shining medals, the people across the territory believed he was a hero. Yet the diary resting inside Ethan's hands revealed a very different man. Caldwell looked calmly at the group. "You have uncovered secrets that should have remained buried forever." Judge Eleanor stepped forward, holding the diary high above her head. "These pages contain enough evidence to expose every crime you ordered." The governor smiled without fear. "Dead witnesses cannot testify." He raised one hand. The soldiers prepared to fire. Before the command could be given, a loud bugle echoed across the mountains. Another army appeared from the western ridge. Honest sheriffs, ranchers, miners, railroad workers, and hundreds of families whose land had been stolen rode together carrying rifles and the flags of their towns. Daniel Miller led them from the front, his horse charging across the rocky hillside. Hope returned instantly. The mountain became a battlefield. Gunfire echoed through the cliffs while horses thundered across the open ground. Ethan protected Charlotte and Isabella as William. Lucas and Thomas fought beside the honest sheriffs. Benjamin carried the diary toward Judge Eleanor, refusing to let the evidence fall into enemy hands. Governor Caldwell watched his soldiers slowly lose control. Furious, he drew a polished revolver and aimed directly at Ethan. Jonathan Blackwood suddenly stepped between them. The bullet struck Blackwood in the chest. He fell to the ground as Ethan caught him before he collapsed. Blackwood struggled to breathe. "I cannot change my past, but perhaps I can save your future." With trembling hands, he gave Ethan a small golden key hanging beneath his shirt. Vault 7. Inside the state treasury, every stolen fortune, every hidden payment, every final proof. Those were his last words. As the governor realized the truth would soon reach the entire nation, he turned his horse toward the northern cliffs and disappeared into the mountain fog. The battle was won, but the most powerful criminal had escaped one final time. Dawn broke over the mountains as Ethan, Charlotte, Isabella, William, Benjamin, Thomas, Lucas, Judge Eleanor, and Daniel Miller gathered outside the state treasury. The battle at Eagle Peak had ended, but Governor Richard Caldwell remained free somewhere beyond the northern frontier he was preparing. Another escape. Ethan held the small golden key Jonathan Blackwood had given him with his final breath. Everyone understood that whatever waited inside Vault 7 would decide whether justice truly won. The massive treasury building stood in the center of Capital City, guarded by honest soldiers who had already turned against Caldwell after learning the truth. Judge Eleanor presented the official warrants, and the gates slowly opened. Thomas led the group through long stone corridors until they reached a heavy steel door marked only with the number 7. Ethan placed the golden key into the lock. The mechanism turned with a deep metallic sound. The enormous door slowly opened. Inside rested rows of wooden chests overflowing with gold, silver coins, legal contracts, bank ledgers, property deeds, and secret payment records. Every document carried Governor Caldwell's signature, proving he had stolen fortunes from hundreds of innocent families while secretly paying judges, businessmen, sheriffs, and criminals to protect his empire. Benjamin quietly whispered, "This is everything. No court can ignore this evidence." Isabella discovered another locked chest hidden beneath the shelves. Inside lay dozens of personal letters written by Ethan's parents. Charlotte carefully opened the first one. The final letter had never been delivered. It was addressed to Ethan, "My beloved son, if you are reading this, then our greatest hope has survived. Never seek revenge. Build a future where no child loses a family because of greed. Wealth can always be earned again, but honor once lost is almost impossible to recover." Tears filled Ethan's eyes as he folded the letter. Suddenly a frightened Treasury guard rushed into the vault. "Governor Caldwell has seized the capital train. He has taken innocent passengers hostage. He demands every document inside Vault 7, or he will destroy the entire train before sunset." The afternoon sun slowly descended across the western sky as Ethan, Charlotte, Isabella, William, Benjamin, Thomas Lucas, Judge Eleanor, and Daniel Miller raced toward the Capitol Station. News of Governor Richard Caldwell taking an entire passenger train hostage had spread across the city. Thousands of frightened citizens filled the streets, while soldiers struggled to clear the railway tracks. Every minute brought the train closer to the high mountain bridge, where Caldwell threatened to destroy everyone aboard. Ethan mounted his horse and followed the railway line at full speed. Charlotte and Daniel rode beside him while the others carried the evidence from Vault 7 under heavy guard. They could not allow Caldwell to escape with either the passengers or the stolen fortune. Far ahead, the black locomotive thundered through the valley. Smoke poured into the sky as frightened families looked through the carriage windows, hoping someone would save them. Caldwell stood on the rear platform surrounded by armed mercenaries. His cold smile revealed that he still believed he controlled the future. Daniel pointed toward the old Eagle Bridge, crossing the deep canyon. "If that train reaches the bridge, he will blow the tracks apart." Thomas remembered an abandoned maintenance tunnel, built beneath the railway many years earlier. "There is another way." Ethan, Charlotte, and Daniel entered the narrow tunnel while William, Benjamin, Isabella, Lucas, and Judge Eleanor continued chasing the train from above. The hidden passage led directly beneath the center of the bridge. Ethan climbed through an iron ladder, reaching the underside of the railway only moments before the locomotive arrived overhead. He discovered several barrels filled with explosives connected to a single timing device. Without hesitation, Ethan began cutting the wires while Charlotte carefully removed the blasting caps. Daniel held the support beams steady as the train roared above them. Only seconds remained. The final wire snapped free. The explosives became silent. At that exact moment, Governor Caldwell realized his plan had failed. He leaped from the moving train onto a waiting horse and disappeared toward the northern mountains. Ethan climbed onto the bridge, watching the train safely cross to the other side. The passengers were alive, but the most dangerous man in the territory had escaped one last time. Far beyond the mountains, Caldwell smiled as he crossed the border, believing no one would ever catch him again. Golden sunlight covered the valleys as spring returned to the western frontier. The long years of fear had finally come to an end. Governor Richard Caldwell had been captured only weeks after crossing the border when honest lawmen from another territory recognized the reward notices carrying his name. He was returned in chains to face trial beside the remaining members of his criminal empire. Inside the grand courthouse, every stolen document from Vault 7 was presented before the judges. Families filled the galleries waiting to hear the verdict. After many days, the court ordered that every stolen ranch farm, business and piece of land be returned to its rightful owners. The hidden fortunes recovered from the treasury were divided among the families who had suffered for decades. Justice had finally arrived. Ethan stood quietly beside Charlotte as they watched smiling children run across the courthouse lawn. The anger he had carried since childhood slowly disappeared. He remembered his mother's words that true victory was never built through revenge but through kindness, honesty, and hope. William Ashford proudly reopened the Ashford Ranch with the help of every family in Red Creek. Isabella used her inheritance to build schools, hospitals, and homes for children who had lost their parents. Benjamin Harper became the official legal advisor for the recovering communities, spending the rest of his life helping innocent people reclaim what had been stolen. Daniel Miller finally found peace after years of hiding, and Thomas returned to Iron Pass, where the old railway station became a museum telling the true history of the frontier. Several months later, the people of Red Creek gathered beneath the same old willow tree where Ethan and Charlotte had first spoken together. William smiled as he placed Charlotte's hand into Ethan's before the entire town. This time there were no enemies, no secrets, and no fear, only love. As the minister blessed their marriage, cheers echoed across the valley. Friends, family, and neighbors celebrated together while horses ran freely across the green fields, and children laughed beneath the warm summer sky. That evening, Ethan and Charlotte stood alone, watching the sunset paint the mountains with golden light. Charlotte smiled. "We finally have the future your parents dreamed of." Ethan gently held her hand. "And we will protect it for every generation that comes after us." Far across the peaceful valley, church bells rang with hope. The darkness had ended. Love, truth, and courage had built a new beginning. The end.